Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning live on Facebook for our usual 9 a.m. property coffee Kickstarter. This morning, we're really excited to have with us Fiona Talbot. Who are the Property Angels? We are three ladies with former professional careers, myself as a solicitor, Karen as an accountant, and Sam as a police detective. And we've all transitioned into the property and business world. We are real property people. We're doing it. We're coalface practitioners, and we're here this morning to share with you our interview with Fiona Talbot. Ladies, do you want to introduce yourselves? Sam, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. So Sam Beddoe, I've got a couple of property companies. I have a service accommodation business. My development company is Revive Holdings. I also have a non-property business. So I've been in property probably about 5 years now. Prior to that, I served 23 years as a police detective dealing with major crime, serious organised crime. So quite a change being in property now. I host a network meeting with Karen and Sarah, partners in property, and also another local meeting too, excuse me, and have experience in a variety of property models, whether that be buy-to-lets, HMOs, auctions, flips, commercial conversions, using pension funds, working with investors. So a bit of a variety there. So that's a little bit about me.
Karen?
Brilliant, thanks. So my name's Karen Stanbridge and I escaped corporate land in May 2015. Having worked there for 25 years at a senior level in business consultancy, project and program management, I took that knowledge with me and began building a property business from solid foundations. So I hold stuff in a limited company structure and in several other more complex structures. And right now I'm moving more into the land assembly and development side of things. So I'm actually actively looking for land in the Reading area. Anyone listening out there, please give me a shout if you've got any. And Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Sarah Smith. For those that don't know me, I bought my first property in 2004, very much as an accidental landlord. And each time I wanted to move property, my broker said, you know, you can keep this one and buy the next one. So I did that 4 times, and that's when I thought, property is quite interesting. And I carried on building my portfolio, going into HMOs after I'd done the initial properties, which were single lets. And when I was making more money from property than I was from my job as a solicitor, I went full-time property, and that was in 2016. So I'm focused now very much on just building my own portfolio. I have done bits and pieces in the past. I owned an estate agency for 4 years. Building that up from scratch, which was quite good fun, but I don't miss it now, I have to say. And also host Partners in Property with Karen and Sam here. So that's me.
Brilliant. And you can see we've got the lovely Fiona sat with us today, and we are super excited to be interviewing Fiona. She is probably one of my go-to people, my key go-to people around property, around business. And she is what I would describe as a serial entrepreneur. So Fiona, tell us a bit about yourself and how you ended up settled in the UK.
Wow. I mean, listening to your introductions, I feel like I should be introducing you fabulous ladies. You've got such a great, you know, track record in what you've done, and, you know, doing it at the coalface, which is always a good thing. So how did I get myself settled in the UK? So I grew up in Australia, in case you can't tell. I still haven't shaken the accent, 22 years later. I was the child of landlords. So my parents had sort of several rental properties, and they were able to retire in their 50s through that income. And I think they retired on about sort of something like 5 or 6 cash properties. So they used what I call the leapfrog method, you know, bought one, cashed it out, bought the next one, the 2 cashed it out, bought the 3rd one. And, you know, they're the envy of their friends in their 50s being able to retire financially free with that cash flow. I kind of messed the model up a bit. I mixed it up, and I've done it using, you know, the key things are compounding and leverage. But, you know, I guess we'll talk a little bit about that, my growth journey. But back to how I ended up in the UK. It all starts with love. I met my husband in a bar in Tokyo. So I went to Melbourne University, and then in the summer holidays, I used to work in a ski resort in Japan. Sounds all very glamorous, because I studied Japanese as a minor in my degree. And I met my husband on the very last year I was there, just as I was graduating. and he was in the US Air Force, and he was stationed at RAF Mildenhall. So he served there for 3 years, and then he left the military. By that time, we kind of were a little bit of, we were fairly established. I was working at NTL as an analyst in the reporting metrics team, and which was, really good, but it was an hour's commute each way. So it was quite a horrendous commute, and to drive it each day. So you can imagine nearly 2 hours every day, very draining. This is all before we had kids. So, so we've been, and one thing leads to another, and I've been here 22 years, but my husband's American. So we do tend to go out to the US quite often as well, usually in the summer.
Ah, brilliant, brilliant. And going back to the start of your journey, tell us about when and why property stopped being a part-time hustle for you and instead became your full-time focus and effectively the foundations from which you built your phenomenal business.
Thanks for calling it phenomenal. When you do something for 22 years, you tend to get pretty good at it, whether that's fitness and health in your body or property. So I think I've just been at it a long time. So it's success by time served, so to speak. I didn't really do it on the side. So luckily, because we were always quite careful. We always lived on one salary, even right from the get-go. And, most of my husband and myself didn't have parents that could sort of help us in any way, shape or form. So it was very much when we were together from our 20s that it was all on us to build any kind of wealth for ourselves. We weren't going to see any help from parents because they frankly couldn't. And so we had rented out, we'd had to move the accidental landlord thing so I could be a bit closer to work, and also he was near his work. And so we had rented our house out. So, but again, I'm a child of landlords, so I'd already seen that a little bit passively as I was growing up. Not that they particularly explained the mechanics of it or anything like that, but I did know that on occasion we'd have to go and clean at rentals and stuff like that. So I'd rented it out, and then I left full time from there onwards. So I decided to make the strategic leap to leave my job and work. So I really relate to those people that I see on Facebook talking about leaving work to make property work full time. So the net was gone. I had to make it work right from the get-go. So I didn't have a hybrid situation where I was investing in properties at the same time as working. I left to do this, but we were also very, very careful. Call them the salad years. First 5 years, no holidays, working hard, cleaning rentals when tenants would leave, all of that graft my husband and I did ourselves. So
no, that's brilliant. And so you know how it should be done, and you've learned from the ground up, basically.
Yeah, I didn't deserve anything. I didn't deserve an annual holiday. We had no one to take the phones, and it was back in the day where communications weren't so great. I didn't feel I deserved, an annual holiday, and we certainly didn't really have the budget for it because we were reinvesting absolutely everything we had in growth. So that was my philosophy. And eventually we got our first sort of secretary PA part-time, and poor lady in hindsight, she's brilliant woman, Connie. I still keep up with her. And she's American. She was an Air Force wife. And she took the phone for a week, which actually in hindsight is quite a big ask of a part-time worker, just so we could take a week off in Spain on some kind of budget. It was like £280 or something for 7 days in Spain, But I've always underpinned this whole experience with hard work, effort, delaying gratification, putting the miles in, all that sort of thing. So that's very much my nature anyway, my values.
No, that's brilliant. So carrying on down that theme, can you tell us a bit, I know you've been through many, many different business models, but can you tell us about the business models you operate within your company now and why you started exiting from the vanilla HMO model, the benefits, the efficiencies, etc.?
Well, that's like 3 questions in one, so I have to try and remember because I tend to answer the first and then I've forgotten by the end of it. So the models I'm operating, so I'm in a strategic pivot anyway, or a business model pivot, and now anyway, and that pivot's been carrying on for probably 18 months. So I had over 130 HMO rooms, and that's very much a side minor strategy actually, but major major operational work, minor. Almost, you know, it's that 80-20 almost when the HMO is concerned, 80% of the work, 20% of the revenue compared to the rest of the portfolio. About 12 to 18 months ago, I'm very lucky. I've put a lot of effort in over the years to make sure I have hard numbers. I can pull numbers at any given time and really know what's going on. You know, not what I think, you know, what I might wish was going on, glass half full stuff, I will really understand. And that includes taking things like annual expenses and splitting them across the individual properties too. So I've got really good numbers. And I was just looking at a couple of my HMOs and I thought I'd understood that all this compliance and extra work, we were always business landlords anyway, so compliance doesn't bother us, but it still has to be worth the effort. And I was looking at some numbers and I thought, I'm just going to take this, you know, this is thousands, yes, and over 500 a month, or actually every 1,000, but let me go and have a look at if I turn this into single let. And I was a bit shocked. There's one particular house. I was a bit surprised to learn that it would have made more money as a single let and with a lot less of the aggravation, a lot less frictional costs, a lot less operational, a lot less risk, you know, stuff like that. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to really do a review across the whole portfolio. And I ascertained that by doing, so we kept our gold standards, and I sort of thought, do I want to go large or do I want to go home? You know, do I want 1,000 HMOs or do I want only a few high performers? And I really operate from a place of you simplify to multiply. So a lot of times, you know, I say, oh, I'm exiting this, or I'm thinking, oh, she's finally taking it easy. No, certainly not. In fact, I'm busier than I've ever been. It's because I'm simplifying for growth. And I think a lot of property investors spend their time building complex, highly operational situations to run. And that's great, as long as you know what the opportunity cost of that is. So I started my exit and I found myself in the COVID pandemic with only 40 rooms versus 140, whatever I would have had. And that also was a lot easier for us to manage during the pandemic. So I'm very comfortable in my choice. And then the remaining HMOs, I have a plan for those now that I've been evaluating, where I'll make this sort of similar net profit without having to turn them into singlets. Those are the ones where it's just, you know, I'd be forsaking tens of thousands by turning them into single lets. So, you know, we're changing the business model on those as well for something in between. Yeah, and you know, and this could be area specific. I'm not saying it's something everybody across the country should do. I just think you've got to really be factoring in the inspections, the compliance, the hassle, all the things, adding it all up, and making sure it's still giving you the net profit that you really want from that property. By the time, I mean, I had this attitude: 6 rooms, one's empty because there's a lot of competition now. And one, especially with the rent-a-rooms thing, where people can rent out a room in their house as well, don't have any of the compliance we do, and one's in arrears, and you've got a single let right there. So,
yeah, and the other side of that, and something we've spoken about offline, is it threw up benefits from a lean perspective, allowing you to refine your business more, and as you said, make it more efficient and free up headspace for some other exciting ventures you've got boiling in the background.
I'm always up to something. I like to keep it busy, keep it going on the plates. So,
no, that's really, really good. And like you said, COVID, it's made a lot of people reevaluate what they were doing and refine things where they can, so that they're able to you know, weather the impact, as you say. So I know you love to challenge yourself, and I know you love continually learning, and part of that involves you being a member of several major entrepreneurial stroke business clubs, and you do this to keep the momentum going, give yourself further competitive advantage. And one of the things I know you're doing right now is really focusing on your fitness to give yourself that extra energy to continue pushing yourself. Do you want to tell us your philosophy on that, and what a typical day looks like for you, if such a thing exists?
So it's more like a typical week, because I frame it out as across a week rather than a day. I have brought fitness and wellbeing back into my life. I was always actually in my life. And then unfortunately, so in 2012, I suffered from entrepreneurial burnout because I wasn't operating in the correct framework. I was a workaholic. I had 2 small children. I had too much going on. So I had to create a new blueprint in 2012. That was challenged in 2016 when I had an accident. Actually, it was early 2017. Sounds very glamorous. I was doing a boat transfer in Egypt. I was overweighted. It was a health and safety fail in terms of the transfer. I fell and broke my leg, ruptured my cruciate ligament and meniscus, and I had to have reconstruction surgery 3 years ago. So I was on crutches for 5.5 months in total. And it just, you know, I'm one of those people, my metabolism, I've got to eat like a nun, exercise like Mo, that guy, you know, the runner. And I've just got to be really good, or I gain weight. I'm just predispositioned to that. And I had gained weight, and I just thought, you know what, we're going to take the bull by horns. I'd like run out of excuses. We're in lockdown. I have the space. I have the frictional time. I worked throughout lockdown, make no mistake, and I'd also just moved. But, you know, I had to bring it back. A pandemic's not a reason to look at your own health, then I don't know what is. So, yeah, but and honestly, I've really missed it. It's been absolutely fantastic. I work out with the amazing, I do weight training. I work with 2 trainers. I work with the amazing Sam Slack, who's fantastic. And then I also do boxing pad work with a guy called Tyler Gujon, who's on a break at the moment. So I'm working out with Sam, doing weights, and he's helping with my nutrition. So that's really good. And sorry, did you ask what strategies I'm doing now? Was that the start?
No, we have touched on that, but I know you've got some exciting things burning away. And this is giving me any training.
So I've always been an advocate of training. The enemy of learning is knowing. So I never think I know everything. I'm always mildly surprised that some of my peers then sort of stop training and start teaching. And for me, I think I don't feel at the place that I'm ready. You know, I enjoy training. I enjoy speaking. I enjoy, things like that. But I also really am at a page. I've still got a growth arc that I need to go through in my business, and I need to obviously carry on learning. I'm just about to. I have a call today, actually later today. I'm just about to join a times 10 program running out of Toronto. So it's actually on Zoom at the moment because of the pandemic, but I'll be going there quarterly once I've completed that sign up. For those classes. I did the Hunter Entrepreneurship Program a few years back. I try and do something every year that grows my business knowledge. And I'm actually very careful and selective about the programs I choose now. At first, I sort of did a few different things because they sounded good, but now I'm quite careful about what I choose. They tend to have strict entry requirements so that I know that the peer group's appropriate. And I do often say this, bit of a broken record in the property community, that a lot of property investors, they're lacking business training rather than property training. Once you've got your model down, you should be looking at business training. And the good thing is it's actually more affordable than, I just need to mute my desk phone. So it's actually more affordable because, some of the costs of masterminds and programs in the property world are a bit eye-watering, really. 18,000, 20,000 to mentor when, you could get a non-exec director in your company for that, who would look at your numbers, would, be devoted to helping you grow your business. So
I completely agree with you. And I know you've got some ideas and new potential business ventures bubbling away at the moment. Is it too early to talk about them, or are you happy to share what you're thinking of introducing fairly soon?
So I'm very superstitious. It's a bit weird because I'm very superstitious about deals until they're done and dusted and in the bank. And then actually I forget to post about them. It's not my style anyway, because I'm already on to the next one, or I might be multi-dealing, juggling 2 or 3 at the time anyway. So yeah. And so one of the things, if anyone's ever heard my talks on my model, it's very much quite a simple, I buy assets that create an income, manage them well, that's key, and reinvest that income into more assets that create an income and so on and so forth. You know, that's my simple business model, and also a great machine for wealth creation. You know, so, but one of the things that I was struggling a little bit with was, and also bear in mind, I don't use outside funding. So my machine's self-funding now. I have the odd money partner, people that, you know, actually in recent times, they lend to me money because they know it's secured well. I always, you know, pay them back, but I don't have I'm growing my business through, so you grow your business through debt or equity, giving equity to other people. I've grown mine through debt, never equity. So I really needed a part to the business that would bring in a little bit more cash flow, I think, because, you know, property can be quite hard yard sometimes to get proper net yields in your pocket that you clean and done after taxes, after compliance, after the ICRs, after all the 25,000 other things. You know, it's so I always used to say $1 million in assets used to generate between 20 and 60,000 net yield, depending on your strategy. So my area being not Northern and not London, in between, East Anglia, I get a little bit of both. But, you know, that means that for a £10 million balance sheet, you're probably only making 150,000. It's not the greatest in growth capital. So I've been looking for a while now, and I've got various other things that bring cash in. But I wanted something quite significant and stable, I guess you'd call it. And so I've been looking at maybe expanding into the financial side of property, mortgages, bridging, short loans, hard money loans, as they call it in America. So that's something that's that we're pivoting with in the business. And then also a business model change, so exiting some of the lower performing business models for, it's not necessarily on paper, potentially lower performing or equal, but a lot less hassle, back to that simplify to multiply stuff. So
now you'll be phenomenal at this, and you know, everyone listening, watch this space, because you're going to have somebody there who's really walked those grounds, knows how to analyze deals, and
I know how to underwrite, and I know where investors hide risk. And I've over the years had hard money loans myself, quite often, always repaid. In fact, they keep coming back to lend me more money, and yeah, I know what I've paid, and I know that, you know, that it will work. So, yeah, I've got a couple of things in the cooker at the moment, probably four major things. So that one, I've got a commercial conversion in the pipeline, a land acquisition that I'm sort of going through as well. So
now, even with your own home, you were continually thinking of how you could maximize the value of that in the future when you moved in there.
Yeah.
You first analyzed a different approach, which most people just don't do on the in.
So one of the things that's taken me a really long time to understand in my property world is I think I can see a deal in 3D, and I think that's a really good skill if you've got that and if you can develop that. I can see it from all sides. I can see the risk, I can see operational efficiencies, I can see financial, see legal, all the rest of it. I really look at the whole entire thing in 3D. And I think if you obviously can't do that, you can just try anyway to work on those skills. But I'm just very good at, I've got a good instinct for deals, I think is the reality. But, you know, it's been 22 years. So a lot of stuff I do is intrinsic anyway. It's not learned behavior anymore. I just do it, you know.
But that skill is going to be so useful in some of the new ventures I know you've got coming up. It's so usable and transferable. So these are all things that have gone brilliantly. But Fiona, it's the property world, and we all know stuff goes badly sometimes. So tell us about a deal or project that didn't go to plan. What lessons did you learn from it?
Wow, that's an interesting question. And I'm casting my mind over 22 years, so there might be some cobwebs in there. I've never had, and you know, Karen, you know, I'm pretty truthful, or you all three of you know me quite well, so you know I'm pretty straight talking. I've never had a deal not go to plan. Do you want to know why? Go on. Because I always have a plan B and C. In some ways, the downside might be maybe I'm not as much of a risk taker as others, but you know, I still got to a fairly good place. No, The hardest deals that I think of never punished me financially. They punished me operationally or with my health. I took on too much. But often those were the ones that were most financially productive. Bit of an inverse relationship there. I've never had a deal that didn't go right, because I'm very careful in my due diligence, always have multiple exits. And yeah, I make sure I'm good at what I do. Could I say that? I don't know. I guess if any deal I'd have to put that, I did buy my townhouse in Florida. I paid a touch too much for that. I suppose that's the only one, but I still have it. I use it, and it's a lovely townhouse. So we keep that, but it's never financially particularly paid me that well, all things considered. But it's a lovely place. But no, I've not. I mean, maybe, like I said, maybe I don't take enough risk in that sense. But I always operate in my comfort zone. So and I grow organically. So I've never had a deal, and I'd never do a deal that would sink me as well. Anyway, it's just about rules of engagement. If I do bridging, I'll never lend more than, say, 15% of my working capital pot to any one investor or things like that. So
it makes very sensible rules, and probably you've learned lessons along the way of how you could have done things better and got more out of it.
I failed to optimize. That's certainly the case, but I've never had a financial mistake or something like that. So
that's really good. And we talked about COVID briefly there. Has COVID brought any other lessons or benefits to you that has made you think, made you refine processes, maybe made you think, actually, COVID's made me do it this way, but it's a better way of operating? So how else has COVID impacted your modus operandi?
Well, it was quite funny because coming into COVID, I was already scheduled to move my office. And I was moving house. I had to bring that forward. So we had to move into a rather dysfunctional house at short notice. Because I just bought my house a couple of weeks before that. And so one thing we did really well, we, about second week of March, I moved everybody to home working anyway, ready to go, was be forward planned. And that worked. I couldn't ask for a better response. It was seamless because we were operating, even though we all worked out of the same office, we're operating on the cloud, Office 365, etc., and VoIP phones, stuff like that. So the thing is about a pandemic or a black swan event like COVID-19 is it brings you into the now. It forces you into the now. So your forward planning, your strategic long-term stuff goes out the window. You're just dealing with reaction. And, we're finally coming out to the stage where we need to start thinking forward thinking again. And so I was brought into the now a bit more than I usually am. And because I had furloughed workers, people that would go out into the properties, my husband and I ended up doing more footwork than we normally would do, things that I hadn't done for a while. And that's fine. I still had my own work to do at the same time as well. So, there were interesting times, and I've, worked the entire lockdown. Has it pushed new process through the business? I think every business has had new process pushed through, virtual meetings, Zoom, things like that. It's been great in some sense because I wouldn't often go to certain networking events or meet with people because I was busy and I was managing my time. And this now gives me the opportunity to do that sort of thing. So it's pushed a new process. It's also actually led to me thinking a bit more about business model shifts, which we talked about earlier. And actually, I had the numbers through for April, May and June, and we've had the best quarter we've had in a long time. So I thought we were lean and operationally efficient, but there's always room for improvement, I think, in absolutely any business. And that's partly because repairs were really reduced because obviously nobody wanted workmen in their house. And we had 100% occupancy across the entire portfolio, which is extremely rare as well. And obviously my tenants also, our arrears were minimal as well. So we managed I think we really held our own, if not were strong in the COVID. It's not over yet though, so I hasten to add. But everything worked well. And I've not worked from home in 17 years or something like that. Oh. So that's been a bit of a culture shift for me as well. I'm sort of a Gen X. So is a Gen X, I go to work, I come home, have dinner, might work a little bit on my laptop. Now, working from home, I can, it's just a bit, it's 17 years of habits changing. It's been definitely been different. So
and you
that's really
your little office mate, didn't you, little Casper?
Yeah, I got a kitten in lockdown as well. I already had gotten a kitten last year for the first time in about 15 years. I had a cat, and then in lockdown I hurt my back shifting furniture because didn't get covered, but hurt my back. And when I was in bed 5 days. It was awful. And I kept thinking, I want another cat. That's what I'm going to think about. I'm going to get another cat. So, and I got him. He's so.
And actually, drilling down a bit further on that topic, it's a conversation you and I have had offline, but it would be really useful if you can share your thoughts on this. Now, I know you have a robust plan to support your journey, and I know you believe laying down those plans, setting those goals, bring you phenomenal benefit. So do you want to talk about how you didn't do it initially and why now it's key to your business drive?
For early years in property, I bought houses, got the keys, rented them out. I didn't really know why, or I just thought, okay, I was good at doing deals. I, did the legals and all that. And then I'm trying to think when it was 8 years ago, I just sort of thought, and I'd had various breaks from property as well, when I had my children and stuff like that. And I think I just got to a point where firstly, it scaled so big, I had to I was having the pain of operational issues. And then I just sort of thought, what is it I really want to do? So I started going to, that's when I first started going to business masterminds and things like that. And I just started, I know people ask me questions, what's your purpose? What are you doing this for? I identified that early on. I'm an asset builder. I want a large balance sheet. I manage assets that create income, buy more assets that create income. It's a simple model, really. And so I realized too that a lot of people like to sit in the revenue zone and, working out how your credit control system will be more efficient, boring. I want to do that deal on 4 flats, fun, but unless you've got someone in the back office doing the back office stuff and a means to make sure it's being done effectively, you're going to have to get in there as well. And so I just started doing more of my business training, and all of that, it's almost like following the breadcrumbs. You start to understand, you really need to know, where am I going? Where am I now? How am I going to get there? Lay the track work down to make sure it's, always be going back to that plan, because markets change, governments change their rules, tax systems change. So you need to be going back and continually reviewing that is the actual right pathway now still for the business. That's been something that I've discovered, that I think HMO and buy-to-let, it's just not net returning quite as good as alternate business models. And now it's like, right, well, what am I willing to keep? What am I willing to liquidate to move into those new business models? I looked at my single lets, they're netting 1.5%. HMO 2.8%, it's sort of got hard numbers. And then you look at commercial investment, that nets 5%, 4.5% to 5.5% for a lot less hassle. So that's back to that simplify to multiply philosophy. And so many people stick to the same business models over the years because they don't really realize that there's better options out there, or things have changed, the markets have changed. So I'm going through a bit of a next stage pivot. There's another reason I'm signing up for this. It's a fantastic ×10 growth program. I'm already on a program. This is like the upgraded version of it. And so excited. And that would be to work out the bolt-on finance arm to the business and how I can supercharge that and hopefully create links. Because it's a global program, I'll also meet people in the US that might be able to help me with how to put the correct framework around that business as well. So.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And you can hear the theme through this is business, business, business. You're building a property business.
I'm a business landlord. I'm a business person. That mental shift as well happened probably nearly a decade ago. I'm operating a business here, not a charity, not social housing. I rent to social housing. but I'm a business landlord. So whenever I get asked a question, it's always, well, what would it be? If I had a board of directors, what would they accept, even though I'm the shareholder? So, you know, there've been a few things over COVID, and I think that, you know, especially around rent reductions and things like that, if I think I'm going to lose the tenant or it's going to create a trajectory I'm not happy with, then maybe. But, you know, I had my reserves in place. I operate my business in a functional way. I've got my reserves and things like that, you know. So should others. You know, if they've failed to plan, it's not my place to. So my prudence isn't their discount, if you know what I mean.
No, agree. As they say, failing to plan is planning to fail. With that in mind, with your current knowledge, what advice would you give to somebody wanting to enter the property world? They've got basic knowledge, but not much else, and they've got limited resources. What would you say to them? How should they start out?
I would say knowledge is more important than money in the early stage. They need to get themselves educated. Money is actually, a few people say to me sometimes, oh, Fiona, it's easy for you. You started, you know, back in the day when you could do, you know, cash back on completion in 2003 and buy loads of houses and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't have the internet where I could socialize. You know, I lived quite a lonely life back then. And, you know, there weren't networking groups and things like that. And money is so plentiful. There's so much money in the world looking for a home. So if you get yourself, you know, educated and understand the processes, you'll attract, if you want to go the joint venture route, joint venture funding and things like that. And you'll start to understand, you know, how to optimize property deals and things like that. You could be a good sourcer. You could do a rent-to-rent strategy, all the rest of it. So I'd say knowledge is more important than money in the early stages. Where you get that knowledge from is another question and answer. But, you know, knowledge is out there, money is out there, deals are out there. You've got to bring the three together.
With that in mind, is there a favourite tool or resource you'd recommend they utilise, or is there one you use daily within your business to help them out, point them at?
To know about a favourite, I use Asana for task management, including my own to-do list. We all use Rightmove and various things like that. I don't have any problems finding deals. In fact, I have to shut it off sometimes because it's too noisy. Also, timing is very key as well. Another thing with age in the property world is understanding you don't always have to be doing a deal. It's not about the calendar, it's about the deal. So I used to always have to be, saying that I've got sort of 4 things in the cooker at the moment, but that's somewhat quiet. And to be fair, they tend to come to me now more than I have to go out looking for them. And also I'm at the point now where I've, you know, my portfolio is broad, so I can actually optimize assets within my portfolio anyway. But back to the tools, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm really old fashioned as well. If somebody brings me a deal, I don't put it in a spreadsheet. I might, if it's commercial investment, I've got quite a few parts to it. I can either work out in my head the numbers, or yeah, somebody better take me to Las Vegas. I work it out in my head most of the time. I can tell.
That's feel from your knowledge, your experience.
Yeah, it's always validated on paper, but I can tell. I can do a lot of the maths in my head, and or a pen and a paper. Because, you know, if you're driving along one day with your kid in the back and an agent rings you with a deal, you haven't got your spreadsheet. Although some people might, because tech is good now. You pull over, I can do it with a calculator and a pen and paper most of the time. So I don't particularly have a go-to spreadsheet. And anyway, I like building spreadsheets. If I'm looking at a particularly complex opportunity, like I'm looking at something that's got a title split, I'll put it into a spreadsheet. I think into a spreadsheet quite often. Yeah, so nothing I use on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. But I didn't quite answer your question on how my typical day looks. So did you want me to get into that as well?
Yes, that would be useful. What you typically do on, well, you said a week, really, your day looks
like... So I have a week that I balance out rather than a day. So it's, funnily enough, it's something that I was kind of already doing. And then the entrepreneurial program on at the moment, which I'm about to join you, I'm just doing you too. They sort of explained the entrepreneur time system. It was very similar to what I was already doing. So that was quite a good reinforcement. And actually, I did my goal setting day in January. I do goal setting to help people set their yearly plan. As you remember, Karen, I explained it there as well. So have you been following it? Karen, have you been following the 3-day system?
No.
You have? Okay. So it's kind of a 3-day system. So I call them utility days. Those are the days we just do that kind of work that makes everything else happen. It's not revenue generation particularly, it might include a little bit of trimming, but it's like at the moment, I'm needing to open a couple of bank accounts, you know, some of the stuff, my financial controller, it's utility work. So for me, those typically tend to be definitely a Monday, always a Monday, no outside meetings, only this utility work, and often a Friday. Then I have, I call them blue sky days. The days, and they're half a day to a day a week. You don't need loads of them. A lot of people get people in so they can focus on the business, but it should be a transition. Now you're going to have 5 days of total revenue generation. Not sure that's even going to work. So for me, it's very much where I let my mind kind of rise up to the blue sky, look ahead, think about where we're going, revenue generation opportunities, stuff like that. And I'm kind of a bit of a weirdo too, because I sometimes say, right, let's say 50,000 through operational cost control. How am I going to do that? And then I sit there like, almost like a puzzle, figuring it out. Oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do that. And then the third day is, so you've got your utility days, which is the boring back office work that a lot of people avoid, but is a necessary thing. And as you go further along in, you know, maybe you have more staff, those sorts of days change. Often, sometimes I'm actually having meetings with them, coordinating their utility work. And then blue sky days where focusing on revenue generation. And that really needs to be away from the noise of the office and the grind, you know, where you do that, you know, individual to person. And third day is like a free day where you sort of have time out from the business totally. Very difficult for the entrepreneurial mind to do, very difficult. I find it quite difficult to do as well. But that's where the magic happens too. The free days mean you're clearing your mind, and then often those magic thoughts come on. I mean, I have some of my greatest thoughts after a heavy workout of cardio, and then I go, oh, I should start a financial to the business. If I did this and this, and I sit there and I go, oh my God, I could be this, you know, here within 3 years, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so those 3 days, it's a 3-day system. That means everything gets done in the week. So Mondays tend to be like that, and Fridays, utility, Thursdays, a focus day. What I found in COVID, all the focus days went, it was all about utility day, every day utility work, you know, furloughed staff and all the rest of it. But now it's time to be bringing it back to, you know, those habits as well. And then obviously 3 days are on the weekend, though I do a bit of work on the weekend, but I only do focused sort of blue sky work usually.
It's really useful, and it's a habit that you now have that you didn't have way back then. And it's a habit that, you know, people listening in should probably adopt from the beginning so they grow the right way. So I've got one more question to ask you before I hand over to the ladies, and they'll have some questions from the audience. So is there a specific book you'd recommend people read? Something that really was like, just like that for you?
It really depends, because that's a, you know, I loved The Power of Now. I listened to that on Audible, on the cross trainer twice through in a row, because I very much realized I was a futurist, not very good in the now. My biggest takeaway from that book is, you know, the past is a memory trace, the future is not certain. But it doesn't mean that's not an excuse for planning and progress. I love the book Traction for just operational efficiencies, understanding your value system, lots of really good nuts and bolts. The guy who wrote Traction's on the same entrepreneur program that I'm on, by the way. He completed, it's a 5-year sort of business program. Currently reading this book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. This is written by a billionaire, and it's excellent. He, you know, very smart guy. I love books by the real deals. And he talks about, it's all well and good them teaching you have a big, hairy, audacious goal, but they don't teach you how to fire your friend that's been working with you and isn't, you know, helping you, stuff like that. It's all about sort of cold face issues. I'm also kind of keep picking up and putting this one down too, the Snowball by Warren Buffett. So he didn't write his biography, he wouldn't do that, but it's by one of his really close friends, and it talks a lot about his life and habits and practices and stuff like that. So I've actually reading the hard thing now. The snowball's so good, I have to kind of almost like, I have to put it down, savor it, go back to it as well. And then this, I picked this up just because it was with them when I grabbed them. Tools of Titan, have you all read those? I just like the way it's laid out. He's interviewed very successful billionaires and things like that. And it's all about understanding the habits and practices of other people, but working out what works for you and your own individual, creating your own individual blueprint. So I changed mine over the years. I was very much a workaholic. I loved being busy. I could juggle 16 things at the same time. I could push through and work through all of that. And then in 2012, 2 small children, 2 and 4, too much work. It just was, I ended up having sort of entrepreneurial burnout. I totally built my blueprint back from the ground up, and I make more money. That's the crazy thing. If I could go back to myself in that burnout and say, this isn't the right way. And now my balance sheet's grown a lot over those years, and I have a much more controlled life. So, yeah. Oh, well, life's journey. I just wanted to say, before you go into the next question, I wanted to shout out to my mum, who's watching from Australia too. She's my mum, Lorraine. So if I can't see the chat screen or anything like that, but if she could say a hello in there.
I think she has said hello, Fiona.
Okay, yeah. I'd like to say, when I was very little, I used to walk a lot with my mum, and she used to point out all the houses around our house. Oh, that's the Italians built that. Look at all those balconies. And my wandering property eye, I call it, and all of us have that, the wandering property eye, started when I was a child back in Australia, walking around with my mum, and my mum was always interested in houses. So she sort of really kickstarted that for me as well. So, yeah.
No, that's lovely. That's brilliant. All right, I'm going to hand over first to Sarah. So Sarah, have you got any questions or any from the audience for Fiona?
Yeah, I've got tons of questions as always, but because we chat quite a lot anyway, that's selfish of me. So I'm going to go to I'm going to go to some of the questions we've had. We've got record numbers tuned in across the platforms this morning.
Oh, hello everybody.
Lots of people saying hi. Lots of people we know, mutual friends as well. Okay, so let me find the first.
Yeah, I can't see the chat screen. I did share it. Let me see if
because it's running on multiple platforms, I'm not going to be able to ask you all of these questions, but I'll do my best to ask a few. So Stephanie Taylor, what are the alternative business models you mentioned, Fiona?
Stephanie, she's always sharp, that one. I watched, unfortunately, in a meeting last week, I could only see a few minutes of your interview with her and last week. So commercial investment, finance, opening up a finance arm, as the Americans call it, hard money lending business, social housing, the right way. There's a sort of I call it a wrong way. There's a less profitable way. And I credit Karen for giving me a steering on the right way. That's great about our friendship, really, because we talk quite a bit and we can sort of share and help each other. So it's good to have a peer network. So social housing the right way, just business, company, property, propco. I talk often about 3 streams. Are you a lifestyle investor? Are you a portfolio investor? Are you a property company builder? So I'm in the property company builder investment company really now. I'm making a move more from the B quadrant business to the investment quadrant. So making my money work for me as well, creating a yield that I can then use in my property company. So a bit on the land side, like Karen, title splitting, looking at a plot of land at the moment that adjoins some other land that I own, go back to my superstition, and then title splitting, getting planning, selling that plot, or maybe even building a house. That would then give access to the other land that I own, which is an acre, which is probably at least £1 million deal once I have opened up that access, stuff like that, I guess. And very much I'm analysing, and this is showing my senior years in property, I suppose you'd call it. I understand the hassle factor too. When I used to start out, it was always like, what do I need to put in? What return will I get? That was enough. Now it's almost like I call it momentum investing. Sometimes I look at other people's big complicated deals and think, well, I could have done 3 deals in that time. Yeah, they're not as sexy and not as messy, but I've done 3 in the time it's taking you to do, or more. So yeah, that simplify to multiply concept. So yeah.
Yeah, I love the simplify to multiply concept, and we've been talking a lot about that. Lately, and I've had similar issues to you with HMOs and things and streamlining. So that's been interesting. But sort of following on from that, we've been asked a question: what are the ways you optimize your asset or sweat the asset? Can you give some tips as to how you get the most out of each property?
Well, I should throw that question back to you, Sarah, because you were in Marbella when we did an optimization workshop. Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, we did a workshop around, I think we tallied up what everybody had sort of found in their businesses. They had to obviously go home and implement. It was like 700,000 or something like that.
It was a lot of money, yeah.
Yeah. What were some of those ways that people found? Do you remember? This was a few years back, but
I do. Well, I think I did the same job at the time, which was I did it for the estate agency rather than for my personal portfolio at the time. So actually, we found tons of strategies.
Yeah, like
ways to cut costs, ways to make new revenue streams.
Yeah. So really looking at all the different parts of your business. I mean, little things. So I sit down and I used to do it once a year, and it's just gotten to the point where, and in fact, I haven't done it for a while. So I should really need to get back to it. I have a little spreadsheet now that I do it in. I'm never a person that likes fee gouging. The tenant fee ban barely affected us. I think we had 12,000 in fees over the year prior. So, because that's not where our key income comes from, but reasonable and fair fees, obviously ensuring that you're operating, reasonable and fair fees. I mean, I've got a property at the moment that it's got a big back area and it's a HMO, and I keep saying to myself, I need to put some storage units in there. It's a physical optimization that adds anything to that. We had over 20 HMOs, and one of the optimizations was we should be separately leasing the garages as storage, because if we can get £80 a month for 20, that's £1,600 a month, stuff like that. Just 1 or 2 didn't have garages. I'm just trying to think of some of the other examples. Looking through all your direct debits and standing, and especially I have multiple, my business is, I can't see the edges now. My metrics are how I see the edges. So it's going through all of those individual standing orders, making sure that they're critical. And in fact, I'm not sure if you can see it. I've got a whiteboard here. Can you see my whiteboard? See my messy office? That's our dashboard, our office sort of, one of our sort of whiteboard dashboards. And we have a star corner, and I'm challenging my staff to also look for optimization opportunities. Oh, I'm all crooked now. And they get into it as well, where they'll come and say, oh, you know what? We're not really on the best tariffs for the HMO. I'm cool crooked. For the HMOs, if we do ABC, we'll save the business £400 a month or something like that. I mean, the bigger you get, the harder it is to spot the optimizations, but also the more of them there are. If that makes sense too. So just sit down, go through your direct debits, look at your revenue streams. As existing revenue streams that you can open up. I mean, Stephanie Taylor did it. She's doing training now as well as running a property business, taking the skills that she's got, opened up a new revenue stream, stuff like that. Making sure your finance. Sorry, one more. Making sure your finances. Obviously, I go through and just check all the debt rate, the rates for paying, the pay rates, and every now and then I refinance or tweak those as well. The key thing is making the time to do it. It's having that regular slot, if it's once a month or once a quarter, where you think, right, I'm going to take half a day. It's a good thing to do on one of those blue sky days. Look at the existing business and see whether or not you can, where you can make savings, essentially. Look at who you're paying, whether it's competitive, look at your revenue streams, look at your assets, just run it across everything. It's a great thing to have a mentor or a coach or somebody that's capable of. I mean, we had a couple, didn't we, Sarah, on that mastermind that went back and they created £130,000 extra income based on that optimization we did, that workshop. So yeah,
it works. Yeah. And also what you were saying about the nuts and bolts and going back and reviewing everything. I know we had a conversation yesterday. I was looking to raise some finance and you said, oh, you know, what about a further advance? And I was like, okay, and quickly had a look and I said, oh, that one's got a really good, you know, 40% loan to value. Maybe I could, and I've already applied for that further advance. So
okay, well, it works then, doesn't it?
Well, I hope it works. Yeah.
do with a friend, get a property friend or a business friend, and you know, maybe do it together.
Yeah, 100%.
So, fresh eyes.
There are lots and lots more questions, but I'm very conscious we haven't gone over to Sam yet, and we're already an hour in. So leave it there.
I've got a question, Fiona. So when you started out 22 years ago, I think you said, you would have had a goal on why you're doing this and why you're, you know, making those early day sacrifices and all the rest of it for the business. Is that the same goal as you have now for why you put so much energy into your business?
That's a really, really good question. And I've never been asked that. That's a brilliant question, actually. So when I started out, it was my husband and myself, no children or anything like that. And, you know, my God, I just liked buying houses. It wasn't financial freedom or living on a beach or anything like that. Obviously, first 5 years, no holidays. So got that wrong if that would have been my goal. I think it's just financial security. And then obviously I've had my two boys. I have two children. They're now 11 and 13. And, you know, I live with, is it 6 guys, 6 males? I live with 6 males and me. So I'm very much a male brain anyway. And now it's about legacy. I like asset building for asset building's sake. I've always thought I want to be in control of large balance sheet and large amount of money. I'm not quite sure why. I just think I just enjoy it. And I think there's a lot, you know, a lot of people in the world with controlling large amounts of money. And it'd be good to have, obviously I know my own integrity levels and, you know, and I want to be the person that can build the school if it's needed, or I align a lot with the Warren Buffett style of thinking. Yeah, maybe not living as modestly as he does, but yeah, so it's, you know, legacy for children. I just enjoy, and I enjoy the basics, the principles of business. There's some aggro that goes with that as well, but that doesn't do me in. I push through. I've a very much a growth mindset, which can be quite annoying at times because obviously I'm never almost satisfied. I'm always thinking, how can we pivot this and have the next thing? So
how do you reward yourself?
Well, I bought my little baby Yoda at the Disney store yesterday. He cost £21, which I thought was quite expensive, but I bought him anyway because it made me happy. And then, as always happens, I came home and my sons decided to claim him because they quite like the TV show. He looks like my cat Casper. Actually, I'm trying to get a photo of the two of them side by side. I've challenged my son; he's quite a good photographer, to get a picture of the two of them. So watch out for that excitement on Facebook. I'm not a car person. I have a group of mainly guy friends that are all very, very successful, and they're always posting pictures of all their fancy cars. And I drive an electric car. You know, quite often have the money in the bank to buy the fancy car, but for me, I just can't do it because I keep thinking £1 today is worth £500 in 50, you know, compounding. I'd rather put it into a growth. Though some people say you can make money if you buy cars correctly. I don't know which cars to buy. I'd be useless at that. I'd need somebody to pick the cars for me. So, you know, I probably don't make lots of rewards at small rewards. I do big ones much less often. So I just bought quite a substantial house in Cambridge. I'm at just 20 minutes from Cambridge Business Park, where like AstraZeneca and all that global headquarters are. So that's pretty fabulous. And, you know, we have a pool and stuff like that. So that's probably been a decade-long reward. And last year I made the decision to spend August in the US in our house in Florida. And I would have been going there again, but they've cancelled our flights. Probably what are your wealth goals? I was asked that once, and mine were very much like around more things, experiences, being able to take my kids to Universal and get fast passes so we don't have to wait in line without even thinking, being able to fly business, stuff like that, really. Being able to work with my trainer, which is obviously there's a cost involved, stuff like that. More like, not little and often, it's more like very irregularly, but big when I do it.
And how do you spend a day off?
Well, at the moment, I'm taking a lot of Saturdays and Sundays off to sort my house out because we've moved, and I used to have a woman that was to help with housekeeping. Obviously, she's not been able to come, so having to pick up, I had to pick up grocery shopping and laundry have been my sort of chores, but it's been good for us as a family because we're all working together to make sure the house and unpacking. We moved to the office a couple of weeks ago, just getting that sorted out. I don't really have, I've been getting into sort of growing vegetables and stuff like that, but I've got such a busy brain, I find it difficult to kind of gear down on a day off.
Yeah.
So what I try and do is productive things, but in other areas that don't require large amounts of thinking. So I'm unpacking boxes or stuff like that. Or going on training programs. I find I enjoy doing. I'm doing that weekly. I'm on a business boost once a week, a couple of hours long. So just doing stuff like that. That's my downtime stuff, or exercising.
Just one last question. What's your thoughts on retirement?
So, well, Warren Buffett's 86 and he's not retired. So, it's the kind of, so I don't really, as I get older, I want to do less and less of the buffer utility work and more of the strategic work. In fact, I might work as a business advisor, helping, I'm quite good at looking into people's businesses, working out how they can optimize and grow, stuff like that. I think in the property world, I see a lot of this mentorship coaching stuff, and I wonder why they don't use business advisors. So, and I think it's key to explain the difference. So coach and mentor, £15,000 or something like that. But I used to get fed up because you speak to them and say, well, I don't really know your business, but, and then they'd go on and comment on things. But I want the person to know my business. And as my business was growing, I started bringing in non-exec director style business advisors that, funnily enough, cost around the same amount, but they're expected to spend a day a month or half a day a month in the business looking at the, helping create the dashboards, helping move the needle. And, they've got more accountability than this sort of like third-party mentorship system. And so, I think more property people should consider those sorts of roles in their businesses. I know they've certainly helped me. I had a gentleman I worked with for about 2 years, Wharton Business School, MBA, wasn't even a property guy. Property is my product. He looked at the business and helped me with developing the business side, analysing risk, identifying, forward looking at, market changes, compliance changes, how would that impact on the business, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Fiona. I think the message that's come through throughout the last hour is it's not like you've just said, property is your product. It's all about business.
And even now, I'm probably pivoting more to bringing some other arms to the business too, that a sideline fit hand in glove with property as well. So, so it won't even be property in its purest sense as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Fiona.
No, that's been absolutely phenomenal, Fiona. Thank you so much. So if people want to connect with you, how would they do that? What's the best way for them to engage with you?
Well, I don't obviously have any sort of training or anything like that. So, but, I'm always happy to have a chat. Really just, probably email me or connect. A lot of people connect with me on Facebook. That's about it, really. So I just wanted to say there was another thing that I wanted to make a point about is whatever you do in life, make sure it makes you happy, because happiness is life's greatest wealth. But also, I think you need to be, I always think about that master craftsman apprenticeship style. And a lot of people, they really seem to not value learning maybe as much, I think, as they should, because you've got to understand your craft, understand tax. I know people say, oh, just delegate, build your power team, all the rest of it, but you've still got to know how to ask the right questions and find the mistakes in your team, because they do happen. And for me, I'm very much about being a master craftsman in what I'm doing. So I think, that's an important thing to, and I'm certainly not saying I'm there because I'm still working on it. I think anyone listening that is thinking, I want to grow, I want to achieve, look at what you could do to be that master craftsman.
A good friend of mine uses the term conduct the orchestra.
Yeah.
And absolutely, I'm 100% with you on that. How can you instruct others if you don't at least have a basic understanding of what their output should be?
Yeah, exactly. And it's all out there. I always say to myself, and especially if I'm struggling with something, the answer's out there in the world. My job is just to go out there and find it, bring it back to the business and implement it. It's out there. Just got to brush all the noise away and find those key people that can really move the needle for you, and your business will help you. And they are out there, but they're not shouty and they're not loud. They're the quiet ones. They don't need to chase the business necessarily. And so. No,
that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I've got one last ask from you, which is this. Now, as Sarah said, there are lots of questions and we didn't get to drill down on all of them. Would you be able to go and maybe briefly answer some of the points that have been raised and just respond in the chat afterwards?
Okay. I mean, yeah, I know we're running out of time, but I'm all right. I've got my weekly finance meeting at 10:30, so I'm all right for 20 more.
That would be brilliant. So they'll kind of appear in the Facebook Live comments.
Okay.
We'll tag you in there, and that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Fiona. It's been phenomenal.
No problem. It's nice being invited to be. This is quite. I try and log in now and then on the Thursday. I have a finance meeting on Thursday morning. Sometimes it's pulled forward, so I can't always be on. But I enjoy watching you guys doing this, because I think it's great. And we use the term coalface practitioner, and you guys are definitely coalface practitioner. It was Richard Woodstock, the host of Ealing Property Beat, that called me that once, and I've really taken that on board. And you guys are as well, as I know.